everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Saga, where we discuss all the stories that happen in the Star Wars galaxy beyond Skywalker Saga. I'm David Cottingham here with Hannah Burr. How are you, Hannah?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very good. We, we've done a couple of these now, and we've always done so far these stories that I think have really intrigued us and really captured us. And the one that we're talking about now, I think we both can agree is one of the best stories out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about is Star Wars Bloodline, the novel written by Claudia Gray. And just to set this up before we dive into it, it's a novel that happens roughly 6 years before The Force Awakens. So about 24 years beyond the Return of the Jedi. And it centers around probably one of the best characters ever in cinema, Princess Leia, right? Or General Leia now in this time period. So a lot happens in this book, hints about the First Order, state of the galaxy under the New Republic, a lot of politics, so a lot of good stuff. So first and foremost, Hannah, general overview, how did you feel about this book?
Well, I actually have to be honest right now. When you first told me about this book, I internally groaned a bit. Not because it was about Leia, but just because I'm like, great, another thing on politics. We saw how well that worked in the prequels. Like, all right, fine. But it is one of the best Star Wars books that I've read. I think the whole thing is you really get into the mind of Leia, and once again, you didn't realize you wanted it until it was given to you.
True.
And when you just then started stating the years of when this takes place in the whole timeline of things, this isn't really a spoiler, but she's been able to keep the secret of her being Darth Vader's daughter for that long.
Yeah.
It's only her, right, Luke, and Han that knows. So the fact, and it gets leaked in this book. And that is a huge compromise to her reputation. So you really get to see how realizing what it means to be Darth Vader's daughter in that context, and then what it means, what does that mean for her now? Does that change who she is? Does that influence her role in politics?
Yeah.
So to me, the whole book in general just really helps you take a step inside Leia's thoughts and helps you better understand her as a character and as a woman and as a strong woman who is still conflicted. So that's overall generally takeaway from the book.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point because, when we watch Return of the Jedi and Luke reveals the secret that not only, because in the movie we get the secret that he tells Leia, he is my father, as in Vader is his father. You can see that look on her face, like, oh my God, your father? Like, that is horrible, So then when he says, my sister has it, which is the power, and it's you, Leia, she's getting revealed. We're seeing the reaction of being a sister, but we never really got the reaction of, wait a minute, Vader's my father too, right? And it's like you said, it's been all these years, and we don't really know, because there's not a lot of stories in between that time, how she's dealt with that necessarily, right? All we know from The Rise of Skywalker now is that she cut her training off because she felt that her son needed her because there was, some conflict there. But we never really felt the conflict within her about her father. And you hit several good points there about internally, because, we do always see in the movies a very strong, determined woman leading this entire republic, rebellion, resistance, whatever it is. But internally, she's got so much going on. I mean, it's incredible that she's able to do what she does, right?
I think the perfect example of that is there's a scene where I won't give away who she's talking to, but she's speaking to another politician.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about his distaste for Vader and everything Vader represented. And she said, "Oh, I didn't like Vader either. He tortured me."
All right.
And what
Yeah.
you know as the reader is that's right. A father ended up torturing his daughter. And that's
Yes.
not something in the movies that hits you that hard. And I think it's because if you're watching it without knowing spoilers, you just think, oh my gosh, this evil dude is torturing this woman. That's awful.
Mm-hmm.
But that scene for me brought it home that, oh my gosh, what did that do to her? And then what did that do to Vader when he realizes that Leia was his daughter? We never see that reaction and that thought process. But with her,
Right.
we experience what that did to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is tough to think about too. Yeah, once you tie that back to all the way back to A New Hope. So another thing you mentioned, of course, is the political side of this book.
Mm-hmm.
We're introduced to two groups on different sides of the aisle: the centrists and the populists.
Yeah.
Populists, right?
Yeah.
So of course there's a power struggle going on in the new within the new Senate. And just again, some brief history if people don't realize that Mon Mothma was elected as the next chancellor once the New Republic got established. At this point, she has been ill, and they are now they, as in the New Republic, is now, instead of a chancellor, they are introducing a new leader, in a sense, which is called the first senator. And Leia has been highly regarded as the person that should be the first senator, but of course circumstances come about which lead to the book and what happens. But politics is a big part of this. I mean, it's driving the entire story of this book, and so much so that it leads to not a spoiler because it's not really the main part of it, but it does lead to the beginning discoveries of the First Order.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, because a lot of people may not know, at this point, 24 years later, after Return of the Jedi, no one knows about the First Order yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a very hidden organization. I mean, we now know that Palpatine has had this plan ever since the beginning, right? But it hasn't been revealed yet, and there's circumstances that happen in this book that lead to that. Were you surprised at all that was the case in the discovery of the First Order?
I mean, yes and no. I definitely know that when we saw The Force Awakens, my immediate thought was, how could they let this happen again?
Mm-hmm.
You'd think you would learn from your mistakes. This is one of the reasons why we have history, is to learn from our mistakes.
That's right.
But then when you read Bloodline, you go, well, I would have missed it too.
Mm-hmm.
So yes and no. Understanding the placement of it, you have to imagine that it's at least going to be mentioned somewhere. But the fact that we are already at this point and it's already grown to the magnitude that it already is, I mean, it makes you go, wow, this was thoroughly planned. And there definitely was a backup plan that no one really saw coming, unfortunately. And I think that You mentioned that she's up for senator, and then the release of the information that she's Darth Vader's daughter sparks this fear inside of everybody that she could end up being like her dad. She could
Right.
end up being like Vader and just taking total control over everything, which, let's be honest, it wasn't really Vader, it was Palpatine. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's still the same idea. So, and at that point, as far as anyone knew, Luke was the only Jedi
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
existed. So that was a threat to everyone. And I think fear is a powerful tool. And I don't think it was meant to be that way, but I think it also threw a lot of attention in a different direction to help the First Order grow even more. If that never happened, who knows? It might have come to the surface sooner, and it might have been stopped.
That's right. Yeah, that's very true. And of course, because of that discovery, again, what ends up happening mainly in this book, I think the point of this book is the formation of the resistance.
Yes.
Because I think, like you just said, and I was one of those fans in the seats at the theater when I watched The Force Awakens. We just had the rebellion in the original trilogy, and 30 years later, now there's a resistance. I was thinking, where's the New Republic? Why isn't it just the New Republic? And so now you get that explanation. This is the reason why there is a resistance, and it makes sense. It ends up making sense to me. It's a very incredible setup to The Force Awakens. I don't know if I would go as far as saying it's necessary, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's pretty close. So with that, then, Hannah, what's now knowing the story and understanding the circumstances? How does this book change your perception of the sequel trilogy and its characters? Does it do it at all?
I mean, obviously, it goes back to the whole thing of how could you not see this coming? So
Mm-hmm.
that helps fill that. And then I think personally for me, I didn't know that I wanted Leia's response to being Darth Vader's daughter, and I didn't know I wanted to know how did everybody else know. Because at the end of 6, only 2 people know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then in Force Awakens, everybody knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you naturally assume, oh, everybody was okay with it because Darth Vader was a bad guy, Leia was a good guy, we all cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then with this book, it actually shows that the revelation of it actually had dire consequences.
Yes.
In some cases. It had good consequences in other, and I won't give away which are which. But it comes back to the whole idea that it's a book I didn't know I wanted until I read it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it actually does fill in pieces of the puzzle that I wasn't even aware were missing.
Yeah. 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 I think for me, it's, because a couple things I guess maybe we haven't mentioned yet really, but there are mentions of her not being able to get a hold of Kylo or Ben.
Yes.
Ben's off training with Luke, and she hasn't
She's
heard from him in a
separated from
while.
her. She and her husband aren't necessarily separated, but they're doing their own things, and she
Exactly.
contemplates leaving politics so she can actually be with her husband, Han Solo.
Right, because again, after Return of the Jedi, you think, oh, they're going to get married and have this wonderful life together. Then all of a sudden, we watch The Force Awakens; they're not even together.
Right.
And you're like, what happened? What happened? Of course, you figure out their son, turned to the dark side. That probably put a kink in it, but that wasn't even the case because that didn't happen till after they were separated already, in a sense. They just wanted to keep their own lives together still, her being in politics and him being the scoundrel kind of guy he is, right? So there's those stories there. I think that it helps add some more context to these characters in the movies. So yeah, I think anything Leia it really does just build on her character a little bit, and her values and her beliefs, and that she has, big struggles beyond what we see in her life on the outside. So I really think this is a pretty essential book to read. I think it's one of those ones that'll go down as one of the best in Star Wars. And
Mhm.
I mean, I don't hear anybody talking bad about Bloodline. I mean, it's up there with the rest of them. But it does separate itself a little bit. And man, she's been nailing it on her books. I feel like, and you haven't read, I don't think you've read Master and Apprentice yet.
I have not.
Yes. So we'll talk about that eventually, because that is a fantastic book too. In fact, I would put that above Bloodline.
Really?
Yes. Yes. It is probably my second favorite book. And we will be talking soon about my first favorite book. So any final thoughts, any last thoughts on Bloodline?
It's a must read. It's kind of hard to describe how good this book is, to be completely honest. You just got to trust us and dive right in.
Agreed. So what's your overall rating for this thing?
4.5 out of 5.
4.5 out of 5. Yeah, I'm right with you. 4.5 out of 5 for me too. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close.
Pretty darn close.
Pretty darn close. Yep. All right. So that is our discussion about Bloodline. Of course, it's Bloodline was released a couple years ago, so you definitely can find it out there on Amazon and your storefronts. Get this book, read it, listen to it. It's a great listen on audio form. It is narrated by one of the, if not the best. I think actually, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm correct about that. I think it was done by Mark Thompson, but I don't actually think it was Mark Thompson. Let me correct myself and make sure I have that right, because I am a huge fan of audiobooks. It's like listening to, it's like listening to a Star Wars movie in your ears. January Lavoie, who is a very popular narrator as well.
Mm-hmm.
She narrated Bloodline. Go pick that up on audible.com. It's a fantastic listen as well. But it's also a good read, as evident of Hannah, who just breezes through them. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching and listening. Hit that subscribe button here on the YouTube channel. You can get more of our reviews and discussions. Of course, we have other playlists on the site as well, our weekly podcast, as well as council sessions where we dive into the heart-wrenching questions throughout the galaxy. But this is Beyond the Saga. We will be back soon with the next story. And thanks for watching, everybody, and listening. This is on our podcast feeds as well. So if you just subscribe to our podcast, you'll get it. So thank you, Hannah. That's
Thank
a lot
you.
of info, right? Thanks, Hannah. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. May the Force be with you.